Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Monday, August 3rd, 2026 episode of the Marco Jure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. First show of the week, ladies and gentlemen, first show of August. I can hardly believe it. This year seems like it's flying by, doesn't it? Let's get things cracking on this Monday broadcast because 1 hour just is never enough time, it seems. And by the way, I've got several groundbreaking stories I want to discuss with you today, both stateside and abroad. And my first line of business today has to do with a verdict that just came out of Georgia on Friday. This one doesn't sit too well with me. Let me explain it to you. There was the father of a mass shooter who had opened fire at a Georgia high school. This kid's name is Colt Gray. He was 16, killed 4 people, and the father was then held responsible for the young child and was sentenced to 15 years in prison for providing his son with the firearm. Now, I hear a lot of people coming out and saying, Jerace, this is a great thing. We're holding the parents accountable now because the kids just can't seem to be handled properly. And I said to myself, okay, well, let's take a look at the story. What's going on here? He was sentenced on Thursday, again, just 2 days after his son, who was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the shooting on September 4th, 2024 at Appalachian High School in Georgia. Now, here's the problem I have with this. First of all, what the son did was reprehensible. No doubt about it, the son should be charged 100%. But then I look and see the situation. Now we're going after the parents of the children. So what people are trying to suggest is that the parents need to be held accountable now because of the actions of their children. You know, there are things where this is true, certainly, absolutely 100%, where parents are at fault for what their children do. I have no doubt about this. But where do we draw the line on this? So in other words, did Colin Gray actually just give his son the weapon and say, here you go, son, take it, have fun with it, play around with it? No, that wasn't the case at all. Now, the father did admit that the rifle was stored in his bedroom closet, unlocked. Okay, so that obviously gives access to Colt to come in and take the weapon, should he want to, which is what he did. So there's obviously a situation with that. But then I looked deeper into it. And I said to myself, well, there is no law in Georgia, certainly that would give any type of no safe storage requirement in the state that says you must lock up your firearms a certain way if there's a minor in the house. So he wasn't breaking the law by placing the firearm like that in his room. Now, of course, we could argue he gave access to Colt to take the weapon whenever he deemed worthy, but did the father know about this? Did the father know about this so-called mental illness? I looked into that. So Colton Gray had no diagnosed mental illness prior to the shooting. He had no indicators that he would do something like this. Obviously, he does have problems. There were some suggested behavioral warnings, for instance, but there was no clinical intervention that said, your son is mentally ill. Your son has got problems. Your son has homicidal intentions. Now, the child was isolated, didn't like his teachers. He would look up mass shootings online. He had somewhat of a chaotic home life. You know, we can look at these things, folks, and say that, yes, he was definitely going to lead to this. But where do we draw the line between what a child does and the parent's intervention? So in other words, if a child does something just completely ridiculous like this, take out firearm and go into his school and start shooting people and killing people, where do we draw the line with where the parents should have been involved with? Should the parents have gotten him help sooner? Sounds like they could have. But there was no prior mental health diagnosis. So he wasn't diagnosed with a mental illness. He wasn't treated by a psychiatrist, wasn't hospitalized, was not formally evaluated. None of this took place. Now, had that happened, maybe something different could have occurred here. Perhaps this whole thing could have been avoided, which is exactly what we want in these situations. But Colton never told his father he wanted to kill anybody. He didn't want to commit any crimes. There's zero evidence of that. The father never disclosed anything like that. But the father did admit that, yes, the gun was available to the child in his closet. It was unloaded, but the kid could have access to it. Now, what they're trying to say is the father bought the gun for the child. That's not actually true. The gun was to be given to him upon him turning 18 years. This is what I've been told, by the way. And, you use it for hunting. Again, I know people growing up that were younger than 16, in their early teens. They would go out hunting with their parents. It's not unheard of that you would do that, especially in a state like Georgia. You go to a range and shoot. Again, not unheard of. Not unheard of. So there's no threats. There's no conversation about harming people. There's no warnings about the rifle being used for violence. There's no statements about any criminal plans to do this or that. None of that took place. It'd be one thing if he was confessing to his father, look, Dad, I'm angry. I want to do something. And things like that. That would give you a little light bulb going on your head saying, okay, the father knew about this and he kept a gun in the house. He said he wants to hurt people at school. He wants to hurt his teachers. And you're giving him access to the gun in the house. He had no idea his son was planning this, sadly enough. And this took place. So we have to talk, though, about the situation at hand, though. Where do we draw the line with a parent being responsible for what their children do? These heinous acts of violence that we see in this country. And we're seeing this, it seems like we're seeing this more and more. But here's what took place. Colin Gray he's now one of 3 parents now that has been charged with school shootings across the United States. He was found guilty by jurors in March of second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter for the killing of 2 14-year-old students and 2 teachers. An additional teacher and 8 other students were injured during the shooting. The son is guilty, 100%. The son should be held responsible for his actions, 100%. Now, the judge, Nicholas Prim, sentenced the father on Thursday, also oversaw the sentencing of his son as well. And Prim told Colin Gray that he had failed as a parent, but noting that the punishing negligence is difficult because of the lack of intent. So, I mean, could we foresee the future, folks, always? And by the way, I know people who are as rotten to the core as can be that had wonderful parents, absolutely wonderful parents. Now, I don't know their home life in this situation. I really don't. But just because a child is necessarily bad, yes, sometimes it does follow to the parents, absolutely. But again, as I told you before, can we always hold kids responsible for everything they do and go after their parents as well? And is this the precedent we want to set moving forward? So let me give you another situation. Let's just say hypothetically, your 16-year-old, your 15-year-old takes your vehicle and drives it and crashes it and kills somebody. Are you responsible because you didn't lock up your keys or you didn't know where your keys were or your keys were given access to your child? I mean, where do we draw the line here? And do we bring in a psychiatrist and say, well, the kid had tensions of, wanting to self-harm himself. The parents should have seen this. I mean, anyone could cook up any story at any given time. Obviously, this young child had some psychological issues. Not denying that. Anyone that would go and do this obviously has very, very strong issues. But where do we draw the line here? And I see people, cheering this on. Yes, hold the parents accountable. Hold the parents accountable. But Colin Gray did not go and do this. He didn't. And to suggest, though, that maybe if the gun were locked up, that Colton Gray would not have figured a way to get into that safe, gotten the gun, gotten the ammunition, and done this himself. Listen, folks, if people want to do harm to this degree, to this level, a lock on something is not going to stop that person. I hate to say to you, but a lock is not going to stop that person. It just isn't. And while we could look in hindsight 2020 and say, look, well, the father should have locked that gun up. Absolutely. Again, I'm not denying it. I think if you have kids in your house, you should lock up your firearms. In Georgia, that's not a law. He didn't have to do that. But where do we draw the line? This is the gray zone, if you will. Where do we draw the line in cases like this, where we're now going to be holding parents responsible for their kids doing these heinous acts, killing other people, committing insane levels of violence, especially on a school campus? So again, it doesn't just sit right with me. Again, I think if the father had known about this, if the child was diagnosed, if the child was expressing some level of degree of this intense violence that he had within him, then yes, the father should take a step back. Now they're looking at what the mother said to the father, make sure the guns are not in his possession. Again, folks, if someone wants to do something, if you take away the gun, does he bring a bat into school and do it? Does he bring a knife into school and do it? Where do we draw the line? I mean, we see this in the UK. You can't own a gun. And what is heavily used in the UK are knife and acid attacks next. People that want to do violence will do violence. It's unfortunate. We don't want this to happen. But they will go to the next other option to them. That's just the way these people think. This is the way they work. This is the way they operate. And again, I don't know that Colin Gray aided and abetted his son to do this. Again, how do you link a father to something that the child does in the school? Well, again, really and truly. I mean, prosecutors are pushing for an 80-year sentence for this guy. Argue that he ignored the signs that his son was planning a detrimental. He didn't know this. Again, I looked up every additional testimony in this. He did not know this. He did not admit to it. The only thing he admitted to was, yes, that the weapons were stored in his room, on a shelf in his closet, and they were obviously, they were not loaded. They were unloaded weapons. That's it. So the kid had access to, if he wanted to go and do this, he had the way to do it. Are we going to start holding parents responsible for this now? That's the big question now. And are we going to just limit it to shootings? Can we limit it to any other thing that a minor does? There have been talks about this in California, for instance. These kids that are riding these e-bikes or motorbikes, whatever the hell they call them, in the streets. They're doing wheelies. They're riding at people. They're running into vehicles. Do we hold parents responsible for that now that their kids are acting this way? So, again, where do we draw? I'm just asking you, where do we draw the line on this? Because even so, if a kid is rogue, if a kid goes bad, it's not always the parent, is what I'm trying to say to you. Again, I've seen countless examples of this too, by the way. I mean, kids you wouldn't believe. These were their parents. The parents are wonderful, and the kid is just, again, as I told you before, just an awful person. In and out of jail. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. People have the free will to do what they want in this country. They don't always listen to parents. Sometimes, again, hooked up with the wrong people. I've seen that happen too many times. Great kid. All of a sudden they're hanging out with someone different. Now they're doing drugs. Now they're doing this. They're robbing. And it gets bad. And the parent has no control over the kid. So while we could think about parenting to a T, what parents could do to bring up their kids a little bit better in this country, obviously they need more involvement in their kids' lives, I think. Again, I've talked with you many times before. Going back to church, maybe, folks, that'd be a good thing. I think so. I think it'd be a great thing. There has to be discipline in this country. We don't see any discipline in the public school system. And I know because I taught it for 11 years. There's none, really. Slap on the wrist here and there. That's it. It's a very big problem when we do not discipline children. I'm not suggesting that we should not. We should. Absolutely. You know, the Bible tells us this too, by the way. Teach your children the way they should be, and they shall never stray from that. This is true. You have to be that good example for your children. You have to make sure you know what your children are exposed to. So if you see your kids are hanging out with the wrong group of kids, you need to get them away from those kids. You need to show them a good role model or a good group to be around with. If they're watching things that are extremely violent at a young age, they shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be involved in that type of milieu, if you will. So again, while we can talk about how to parent, can we simply just hold parents responsible for everything that their children do? And by the way, since we're doing this now, apparently, let me just bring some cases to your attention that we have never heard of. We've never heard of parents being charged in these cases. Now, I looked at Chicago over the weekend. I think 24 people were shot, 7 were killed, unfortunately. That's just a typical weekend in Chicago. But we've seen the footage. We've seen the young kids with the weapons, the shootings, and what have you. Just in 2026 alone, this is just Chicago, by the way. 15-year-old boy charged with first-degree murder in the double fatal shooting of 2 other teenagers, 16 and 17. I've yet to hear of how this young child got a weapon, and what are they charging the parents now? Is this the precedent we're doing? A 13-year-old boy charged with aggravated battery and weapons offenses in a Bronzeville shooting that wounded 4 boys ages 11 to 14. That's from CBS. 17-year-old charged with first-degree murder in the killing of a 13-year-old in South Chicago. Where are the parents in this? Are we going to do this now? Or is this going to be just a state thing in Georgia? What is the precedent here? Where do we go from here? Because we can just wheel people in and say, hey, your kid did this? You're on. It's on you now. Or do we hold the children responsible only? I think if there's actual intent from the parents to allow this type of behavior, that fester this behavior, that bolster this behavior, that encourage this acting like this, then yeah, you can make a case for that, probably. Or do we hold the person responsible that does the crime? So I think we're heading into, again, a very slippery slope here where, again, you can bring a father in and just say, yeah, the father had the weapon in the house. You're responsible. Obviously, your kid had problems. Again, the kid was not diagnosed. There is no law in the state of Georgia that says you must lock up your gun. So it's not like he neglected the law in the state. Again, the kid never told his father he had these types of feelings, unfortunately. Maybe he could have gotten help prior to this. So I just say this to you because, again, not every parent is rotten. Sometimes great parents have rotten kids, absolutely. So is this going to be the new normal in the United States where we are now charging the parents for what their kids do? Because there's a laundry list of things like this we can look at. We can look at kids taking over the streets. Yeah, we could do that. Minors taking over the streets in L.A., driving their cars in circles, ransacking stores. Could we do that? Is that what we want to do now? I mean, there's no shortage of that in Los Angeles. Believe you me, I've seen it myself. Where does this go and where does it end? Because again, if it starts like this, it continues on and on and on. Do we just hold people responsible for their actions? Yes, we should, absolutely. I guess, unless, of course, I saw another case here. I just pulled up a bunch of these cases where there's teenagers doing this. This took place in 2022, but it still holds relevant today. 4 teenagers in New Orleans were arrested earlier this week, it says, for the gruesome murder of a 73-year-old woman who was dragged to death in a carjacking that severed her arm from her body. Now, the victim, Linda Fricky, was killed after her car was stolen. So again, she's getting into her car. And by the way, there's partial video footage of this too. I watched, unfortunately. She was leaving work. She's getting into her car. And all these teens swarmed the car. I believe the male of the group of 4, there was 3 other teenage girls with him. It was a 17-year-old boy, a 16-year-old girl, and 2 15-year-old girls, all of whom were taken later into custody and were facing charges of second-degree murder. But you see them pulling this woman out of her car. She gets stuck in the seatbelt. She had her seatbelt on. They're trying to he's trying to get her out of the car to take the car. And she gets caught in the seatbelt as they're driving away. So they ended up dragging her. And this, of course, caused her death. Her arm severed from her body after she was dragged down the street, ladies and gentlemen. So here's a prime example. You have all children, they're all minors, who killed a 73-year-old woman. I won't bring up the races to you in this case. But why are the parents not charged in this case, then? I don't think the statute of limitations has run out. Let's do it then. Your child drags an elderly woman to her death while stealing her vehicle. Oh, and by the way, later we're in court, throwing up gang signs, dancing and laughing while they were being read the riot act to them. They had their day in court. So again, are we going to hold the parents responsible for them as well? And by the way, the parents actually turned in their kids in this case. Thank God for that. Yeah, that was a bit shocking. How's your kid this maniacal, where they will pull an elderly woman from her car, knowingly drag her behind the car as they attempt to steal it, and not have a care in the world, just go back home. Go back home. I've seen this many different times. I saw it in D.C. a couple years ago, too. It must have been an Uber driver. Girl's got in his car. He's trying to stay in the car to, stop them from taking it. He's halfway in the car. The door's open. again, these girls are 14, 15 at best. They drive the car down the street, crash the car, tumble it over. He's killed instantly. They're not. And they're worried about their cell phones. Not that they just killed a man. So I ask you the question, do we hold them responsible, the parents? And if not, why are we just holding them responsible for shooting and not for actually the crime itself, which is murder? Intentional murder. They obviously knew what they were doing. Did they not? You're telling me this 17-year-old didn't know that he was dragging an elderly woman behind after he tried to throw her out of the vehicle? Look at this. I love NBC. The carjacking remains under investigation. Really? What more do you have to investigate? They're on camera. The parents turned them in. Their parents saw the kids in the video. And a couple of them turned them in. Thank God for that, at least. My God. But you never heard about this case, did you, folks? Never heard about it. Never heard about anything. No, never, ever. I think this is a sticky situation. I got to be honest with you. So I say this to you because can we hold parents responsible for everything their children does? Now, if there's aiding and abetting going on, the parents encourage the kids to act in a certain way, then yes, of course, they're an accomplice. But if the parents have no idea their children are doing something, can you still hold the parent responsible? That's the big question. And again, when I was teaching in Los Angeles, I had a kid show me a video. This kid's in middle school. Show me a video of him taking his parents' car and driving it on the freeway, if you can believe that. Yeah, these things happen, folks. But again, if the kid hits somebody, kills somebody, do the parents go to jail for that? Again, it's a slippery slope when we start going down this path. But if we're going to go down that path, we got plenty of cases we can look at, folks. Plenty of cases we can look at. For some reason, we're not holding certain violent criminals responsible, where they're getting out of jail early, or they're simply not getting charged because I guess they're not sane to fit to stand trial. That's a big problem. Don't you think so? It's almost unbelievable when you hear some of these cases when people have a, crime list taller than they are, and yet they somehow get released from jail, or they don't even get sent to trial because of their condition, so-called. Yet they're seen to be left out in the streets to wreak havoc again. Some of these judges, folks, I don't agree with a lot of these judges. Got to be honest with you. I really don't understand how they could actually let someone who has committed violent crimes and put them out back in the street and say, well, this person's mentally unfit to stand trial. So we're just going to put them back on the street so they can, do something else again. Right away. It's amazing to me. Yet this father, of course, that did not have any clue of what was going on. This father did not have any part in this vicious killing that his son did, is now being charged and sent to jail for 15 years. I don't know, folks. To me, it just doesn't seem right. It really doesn't. Again, if we're going to do this, we've got lots of cases. And the statute of limitations on all these cases I just read to you are not expired. So let's get to it then. Let's do it. Let's start holding the parents responsible for every single thing their kids do. I don't even know how you can do that, to be honest with you, when the person has nothing to do with the violence itself. But I do want to move on, folks. We have to talk about RFK Jr., and he got into a nice little back and forth with Dana Bash. This comes out of the Hill. It says RFK Jr. says that parents should now vaccinate their children against the measles. Well, we've seen a bit of an uptick in cases inside the United States, ladies and gentlemen. Some 2,371 infections this year alone, completely outpacing 2025. Now, of course, it never tells you who these people are. Interesting, isn't it? They're old, they're young. Who are they? Are they illegal? Are they not illegal? Did they come from the third world just a couple years ago under Joe Biden? We don't know. They never tell us. I don't know why. Highest cases since 1991. And Dana Bash was not happy with RFK Jr.'s response to various vaccinations in this country. Certainly him challenging the COVID vaccine, if you will, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Dana is not a very smart person. I got to be honest with you. She's not very bright. She doesn't really bring up good points. She just simply says exactly what she is supposed to say. And unfortunately, you can't see this, but in the video footage I have of her, she's simply just reading from her sheet. That's all she's reading. accusing him of this, accusing him of that. Let's take a quick listen.
Yes, Secretary, and you are talking about things that lead to vaccine hesitancy in this country, and it is something that causes problems for people when there is not anything.
Let me ask you something. Do you see your job as ending vaccine hesitancy, or do you see your job as telling the truth to the American people?
I see my job as telling the truth, and the truth is that there is study after study after study. It's one of the most studied things out there in science.
You're repeating
and it is
like a parrot. You're repeating it like a parret. I've actually read the science. Let's come back here and debate the science.
I'm not debating this with you.
Of course you won't.
No, because I'm not debating.
All you know how to do is repeat things that people told you and say, trust the experts. That's what you did during COVID. Now we know that Anthony Fauci, who was the expert, was lying about everything, about masks, about social distancing, about natural immunity, about the transmission from the vaccine, about the source of COVID. He was lying, and you were punishing people for not trusting the experts. And now you're rolling out the experts again to talk about something that you have no personal knowledge of.
Okay, well, guess what? That is my job, to talk to people.
Your job is to tell the truth to the American public.
Yes, and my job is to get as much information as I can. And what we were doing,
skepticism,
what we were doing in COVID and still, with regard to these vaccines, is getting the best information, the best science that we can, and putting it out there. And sir, what you are doing is causing information to be out there that is not accurate.
Who was lying to you?
Amazing. That goes Dana Bash, reading her script the entire time on CNN, the Commie News Network. Now, I looked at the shot for the measles, which is the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, and rubella. And I looked at what's called the ingredients in this. And I got to tell you, folks, I really don't see why you would inject your child with this at all, to be honest with you. Measles is not that deadly, especially in the United States. People back in the day used to get, have measles parties, like chickenpox parties, if you will. They would get it once and they'd be immune to it for the rest of their life. Now, when someone gets the measles, it's like a big deal, apparently. So something changed from, I guess, the 1960s and 70s outlook on the measles, and now it's this crazy vaccine, this illness, rather, that needs a vaccine. I mean, you just can't get the chickenpox anymore when you're a kid. And you get lifelong immunity to it, just like you would with the measles, which, by the way, is nothing that different than the average flu, if you will, coughing, a cold, if you will, things of that nature. It's not that deadly inside the United States. And again, if you just follow the procedure, if, for instance, you were to get rest, fluids, penicillin, usually that's the best way to get rid of it. And most people in the United States do not die from it, especially young children. So let's just understand all that. But I took to this chart that I have on my phone, actually, that I found that I saved years ago when I was looking through all these vaccines and what's actually inside of them. And I'm looking at the MMR2 vaccine. This is the most current one. And they say that the latest testing was in 2025. Now, again, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm trying to look at the data for this. They provide nothing on the CDC website. That'd be the Center for Disease Creation and Production. But I'm looking at it right now, and let's take a listen to what's actually in this. And you tell me if you would want to inject this into yourself or your child. Chick embryo cell culture. WI38 human diploid lung fibroblast, vitamins, amino acids, fetal bovine serum, sucrose, glutamate, recombinant human albumin, neomycin, sorbitol, hydrolyzed gelatin, sodium phosphate, and sodium chloride. Your old table salt, I guess, is in there too. I want to know what in this actually stops you from getting the measles, to be honest with you. I don't see anything in this. Now, WI38, the human diploid fibroblasts, these are essentially lung tissue from a 3-month gestationed female fetus. So this is tissue in these vaccines. Now, why they're in there, I have really no idea, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know why you'd want to inject your child with somebody else's human tissue. Or, for instance, in this case, a chick embryo cell culture. Don't know what that has to do with preventing the measles. Sucrose is extremely toxic, especially to your gut. It wipes out your entirety of your gut bacteria, ladies and gentlemen. Wipes it right out. So if you see sucrose, stay away from it. Sucrose, sucralose, all that. All those roses. Got to stay away from them. Unless, of course, they're naturally occurring. But I see nothing in this that actually prevents you from getting the measles itself. And maybe that's why the success rate is 97%. It's so rare to get. And yet, take it, 97% effective. Shouldn't it work for everybody if it's working? That's my take on that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you what to inject your children with. That's up to you. You can do as you see fit. I have no say in it, to be honest with you. But you should always look at what's inside of these vaccines, if there's any adjuvants in them. Again, I'm looking at this list that I had saved from a couple years ago, 2021, when I was looking at the COVID shot. I was like, what's in the rest of these shots? And we see a lot of the same different things. We're seeing the polysorbate 80s. We're seeing the thimerosal, which is aluminum, which is a heavy metal toxin, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what else we got here. MRC5, those are human diploid cells. Aluminum phosphate, aluminum hydroxide. Again, I don't know why this needs to be inside your children's body at all, or in anyone's body for that matter. Squalene, we got formaldehyde, what they put in dead corpses. Again, I don't know why this needs to, again, be in your children. Calf serum. I don't know. Now, thank God it appears that there's no heavy metal in the MMR shot. However, there is sodium phosphate in it, which I guess helps bind these metals together in the body. So in other words, if you took, for example, a Hep B shot and there's aluminum in it, or if you took another shot that has, thimerosal or aluminum or what have you, it's used as a transportation method in these shots. I understand why it's in there, but it has no business at all being in the human bloodstream. That's the problem I have with it. It doesn't belong in your body. And I can remember being a young child, and we'd have the old school thermometers you put under your tongue. And my mother would always tell me, don't bite this at all. Don't break this, because if you do, we have to go to the hospital because it has mercury in it. Oh, okay. So I never bit it, obviously. Thank God. But why are we so keen on getting injected with mercury or aluminum or what's called thimerosal, if you will? And we say, well, there's certain levels in the bloodstream that's simply okay. That's not the case. There's no level of mercury that should be in your bloodstream. It should be 0. 0 micrograms. That's what it should be. You shouldn't have mercury in your bloodstream. And a lot of it, ladies and gentlemen, goes to your brain. It passes through the blood-brain barrier. It stays in your brain. It's a neurotoxin. Okay. I don't think we want this, folks. Just my thoughts. But again, the study I'm looking at from the CDC gives no information. It just says they've received new clinical trial and post-marketing safety effectiveness. Oh, yeah. And what else does it say here? So the findings, immune response to measles was non-inferior to the MMR2. This is one of the shots here. Let's see what else we got here. It says the MMR2, the older vaccine. So there's 2 different vaccines here. 93% effective after 1 dose, 97% effective after 2 doses. It says here that there's no new safety concerns. No new evidence of waning immunity in children. Okay. So RFK Jr. and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya of the NIH were supposed to come together. They were supposed to do brand new safety testing for these vaccines, all of them, by the way, especially on the childhood schedule. And they were going to determine with a double-blind clinical test trial. So in other words, that means I get saline solution injected in my arm, you get the actual shot, and we see either who gets the flu, who gets the measles, who gets this, who gets that, and we see the effective rate in it. And by the way, there's no difference between the 2 groups, right? You have a control group and you have your experimental group. Again, I know this because I have a master's in health. I did a lot of time with my health research. And of course, we studied research methods. So this is what you do. You do a double-blind clinical test trial. So you have 2 different groups. Nobody knows which one actually got the real shot that's supposed to be stopping the spread of this virus or disease or whatever it may be. And you, again, test the results afterwards, after a certain period of time. Does any group come down with something? Does any group have this or that or what have you? But they say nothing about this in this CDC's own article. It just says that it's completely safe, 97% effective. So my question to you, ladies and gentlemen, is how do we know this if we don't have the actual results? What are the long-term trials of this? Do we know any of them? And what do people that take the shot actually come down with? The small group, while it may be, what do they come down with? Now, we know everything's FDA approved here, but again, the FDA actually approved the latest round of COVID shots, and we know how toxic they were. What did I tell you last week? 2.6 million. Now, again, Ron Johnson said 1.6 million. I've heard it was 2.6 million. Now, he could be reading older data. I don't know. The latest figure I got was 2.6 million people in the United States in the VAERS report that have some type of adverse event that took place, and the conclusion was it was from the shot that they took. Usually this takes place in a few days afterwards, after taking the shot. And by the way, we've seen people with blood clots being pulled out of their noses, their bodies, these white fibrosis fibers being pulled out of corpses, people that have died. We have heard from Edward Dowd. Edward Dowd has proven, looking through information, that 5,000 people a week have died as a result of the COVID shot. Not COVID, the COVID shot. So if that's the case, ladies and gentlemen, if that's the case, how can we sit here and just say, okay, well, I'm sure the MMR shot is completely fine. I'm sure there's nothing else inside of it, nothing else that shouldn't be in the human body, even though nothing I see there should, with the exception of vitamins, and I don't know which vitamins are even in the shot because it doesn't tell us. What the hell else is in it? We don't know. Why are you putting a sodium phosphate, which, by the way, is sometimes even used in cleaners in the United States, so we don't know which kind of sodium phosphate's in it. So there's so many issues I have with all this. We never get a clear, actual analysis about what actually is in the shots and what the side effects of all these things in the body at one given time, injecting into a small child, actually do. Now, I'll let you do your own research on this, folks, but I had to talk to you about this because, again, RFK Jr. is coming out and saying, well, take the MMR shot. Again, we've heard lots of bad things about the MMR shot in this country. The movie Vaxxed highlighted just that particular shot. They looked at all of them, by the way. But where is the actual trial? How many kids did they test? For how long? What were the adverse effects that the children got? It never says it in the study. It just says, we did the study. It was approved. We found out it was 98%, 98% effective. And you got to get 2 doses, though. Don't forget that. And that's it. That's all they tell you. They don't tell you anything else. They don't tell you the racial group, male or female. We don't know. What were the adverse effects of the kids that took this shot? I'm sure we can get a laundry list if we actually looked at it. But this is what RFK Jr. and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya should be doing. And they said last year, by September, they were going to start doing a whole other round of these clinical tests because a lot of these shots had been on the market for quite some time. They had no safety testing to them, and we don't know what adverse effects they will cause. I think it's high time we looked at what's in these vaccines, ladies and gentlemen. I say this to you from a science standpoint. And by the way, there's thimerosal, mercury, aluminum, formaldehyde, squalane, polysorbate 80, sodium phosphate. Why is this healthy to be injected into a perfectly healthy young child? I mean, the moment a baby is born now in this country, they got to get a Hep B shot. Why are you giving a child a Hep B shot when the mother is hepatitis B negative? That doesn't make any sense, ladies and gentlemen. That is a sexually transmitted disease. And they give them a vitamin K shot, too, for some reason. I don't know why they do that. But again, baby is moments old. Moments old! And they're injecting them with vaccines the moment they are born in this country. And you're told to shut up. It's okay. We've decided, the experts have decided, that everything we give you is completely okay because the FDA approved it. Well, again, the FDA approved this toxic COVID shot, too, by the way, folks. It is still wreaking havoc in this country right now. I've told you before, my estimation. By the way, you can do what you want. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you, look at the information. Look at the data, look at the science, look what's in it. Do they tell you what's in it anymore? We don't even know. Is it still under emergency use authorization? It could be. And if so, that should really get you scratching your head, because why did Anthony Fauci want no other alternatives? Because he wanted to push this shot on the people under Operation Warp the Seed. Well, yeah, folks, we saw people injected on television, standing there, then a moment later they're falling over and keeling over. That should have been the light bulb in the head going, okay, something's wrong here. You just literally injected this woman wearing your little mask. She's standing there and all of a sudden she keels over. We saw that time and time again on television. I don't watch television, but I saw the clips of people on television keeling over right after taking these shots. Safe and effective. That's what they're saying in this article too. Look at this. Look at this. Where was the actual... The vaccine is very safe. Oh, thank God for that. What is safe to them, though? What is safe to these people? We don't even know. Scary stuff, folks. So again, all I say to you, make sure you're looking at what's inside these vaccines. You got to look inside these. You have to ask your physician, do I need this? Really? Again, folks, I've never taken a flu shot in my life, and guess what? I haven't gotten the flu since, 2012? November 2012, the last time I was actually sick. Where I was coughing and, I needed to rest. And I still went to work because that's who I am. But I would come home and I would just sleep. I wouldn't do anything else. And after a couple of days, I was fine again. That was the last time I was sick. November of 2012. I don't take shots. I don't do any of these new vaccines, the flu shot, any of these shots. Don't do them. I just don't do them. I just take the right supplementation. I drink lots of water. I get sunlight when I can. I ground when I can. I exercise. And that's it. I eat right. That's another thing, too. Oh, and I drink distilled water. That's another important thing. And you should be getting your sleep, too, by the way. But again, folks, we have to start taking, I don't know if I want to say the homeopathic approach to this. But to me, folks, we have kids today that are sicker than ever. They take more shots than ever. The schedule for shots in the United States, and by the way, RFK Jr. needs to look at this. I think it's like from 0 to 17 is 78 different shots now. I mean, again, anyone in the baby boomer generation would be 3. Now they're taking 78. Now they're sicker than ever. Autoimmune disorders, allergies, all these other problems, these ailments they get now constantly. Something is definitely not right here, folks. Now, does that mean that the shots are the end-all, be-all? No, there's other things, too. There's other things in the food supply, things in the water. I drink distilled water. I eat as clean as I can. I encourage you to do the same. But we need to take a good look at our health. This is what MAHA is all about. So RFK Jr., if he wants people to take the measles, mumps, and rubella shot for the children, or I don't know if there's an option for adults, then they need to obviously prove to us that it's actually safe. Prove to us that it's actually safe. And they have not yet to do that, unfortunately. Well, he's spot on with the COVID shot. But this is obviously something he needs to look into. Absolutely. Absolutely. We need answers. We're not getting them. Now, they're basically telling us, everything's good, don't worry about it, don't question anything, Jerry. Hey, did you see I said it was safe and effective? Well, that's what Fauci said. Every time he got on the television with the new suit on. Everything is safe and effective. Don't, I'm the science. That's what he kept saying. Science. This guy probably can't even spell science. This idiot. Got everything wrong. Okay. Now, I want to talk to you about something else that's equally troubling other than Anthony Fauci and the MMR shot. This comes out of Slate News. It says Senator Rand Paul has revealed that Barack Hussein Obama and his administration gave Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates of hell one of the federal government's highest security clearances that lasted throughout Dr. Anthony the Schmuck Fauci's tenure, leading the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases. Okay. Yep, here we go. It's all making sense to me now, folks. For those of you that don't know, Bill Gates of hell is actually heavily involved in vaccines and vaccinations all around the world. Now, some of you are saying, oh, what a great guy, Joyce. What a philanthropist. Oh, can't get enough of Bill Gates. He's such a wonderful guy. Okay, folks, let me point this out to you. I want to make sure we're clear at all this. Bill Gates is a college dropout. That's all Bill Gates is. He has a high school diploma. That's the highest he got in school. Now you say, well, he got into Harvard. Well, he did get into Harvard. He dropped out after, a year or two? Same with Mark Zuckerberg. Did the same thing. Same with Jack Boots Dorsey. Yep. They all do the same thing, don't they? all do the same thing. They're brilliant, so they go to school and they just drop right out. Okay, well, I don't know, maybe I should have dropped out of college. Who knows? Anyways, why would Bill Gates, a civilian, somebody who has not been elected to any office, certainly not by the American people, be granted one of the highest level of clearances inside the federal government? Why would Obama do this? And for what? What was the purpose of this? Now, this is what Senator Rand Paul just revealed to us. He said during the hearing, the former Biden White House health official invoked the Fifth Amendment more than 100 times. We know that's what Fauci did, of course. He said that Rand Paul then entered into the congressional record a Department of Energy letter confirming that Gates held a Q security clearance from 2014 through 2021. So that'd be during Obama's tenure and Donald Trump's. It says the clearance was granted during the former President Barack Obama's administration and remained active throughout the COVID pandemic. Very interesting. Now, according to the Department of Energy letter obtained by Paul, Gates possessed a DOE Q clearance for the entirety of that, and that is one of the federal government's highest security authorizations and is typically required for access to classified information involving nuclear weapons, national laboratories, critical energy infrastructure, and highly sensitive scientific research. Again, why does a computer putz have anything to do with what's going on with the health of this country? Would he become a nuclear scientist overnight? What is he doing with all this? We're giving Bill Gates access to all this? Or could it be some of the shots of which he has invested so much of his money has, I don't know, he's looking at the information, he's seeing what's being written down by the federal government? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, this just reeks to high heaven. I can't even begin to explain this to you. Now, it says here as well, it says Bill Gates is the largest funder of trying to find these viruses in remote caves and bring them to big cities. Now, why would Bill Gates, the wonderful philanthropist, do all this? Why would he want to bring a virus from a cave into a big city? You and I both have the same question. What happened in China is they went 8 to 10 hours. They went 8 to 10 hours south of Wuhan, 200 to 300 feet deep into a cave, found viruses and took them back to the city of 15 million. Previously released emails show that Fauci communicating during the pandemic with Gates Foundation officials, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, and Chinese health officials. Again, folks, we hear this all, and then we let Fauci sit there and go, he pleads the fifth, he pleads the fifth, he pleads the fifth. Well, he took a part and he can't plead the fifth. Yet here he is doing it time and time again. So again, what did Bill Gates know? By the way, Bill Gates was attending these seminars. I know this because I've researched this. Attending these seminars that, for instance, we're talking about simulations about what to do during a pandemic. Why is Bill Gates so obsessed with viruses and vaccinations? This is the same guy, by the way, the same guy who talked about population control. In fact, the Bill Gates Foundation, or it was once called the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, it was once called the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation of Population Control. Did you know that? Well, now you do. Again, I think it's interesting. The guy who's obsessed with population, controlling it, is the same guy who's obsessed with viruses and vaccinations alike. Now, we know he had money put into the Moderna shot. We know this. So, again, I find this, again, very striking that, again, a billionaire computer guy is all of a sudden obsessed with what's going on with viruses in this country. Now, as Republicans pressed Fauci over the NIH-funded research, the origins of COVID, and previous testimony before Congress, Fauci responded over and over with the same old thing. He respectfully declined to answer because he's a schmuck, and he is the science, apparently. So I want to know what Bill Gates knows. And why was Bill Gates granted this by Obama? Where is Obama on this? Why would they allow him this clearance? Why would a civilian, not a government official, have access to all these files? Does he want to get information about what to do? Does he want to have information as to how to make things more deadly? Or where he can throw more money into? I don't know. We can only speculate. But this is something, ladies and gentlemen, very, very bad. And I can't believe that they would give Bill Gates anything, let alone access to all this information, and probably use it to his own benefit, not to our benefit. But again, this is the same guy who said, he's going to work with the Biden administration and work with these vaccinations and all this other nonsense. Why is Bill Gates, a college dropout, doing any of this? I mean, you could hide behind the philanthropist mantra. That's a bunch of garbage. This is one of the most evil people on the planet, in my estimation. And now he's working with Fauci, who lied. He's working with... he wasn't working with Zuckerberg. But Zuckerberg's also in the mix, right? Meta. You try to post anything on Facebook, Instagram during that. Anything that was alternate to what Fauci was saying, it was completely shut down. It was either deleted, or it had a nice little label on it that said, warning to this post. You were... I think at one point I was blocked. I couldn't even post anything for a couple days. That's the level of censorship we saw, of course, during that too. And of course, we know that Fauci and Zuckerberg talked to each other about how they could facilitate that so much better. Now Zuckerberg is a staunch Republican, isn't he, folks? He's totally behind Donald Trump. It's amazing. It's amazing. By the way, what's going on with Fauci? Why has he not been held yet and charged with contempt? I'm waiting to see this. It says here it says that they're trying now to vote in the committee to push him forth for this contempt of Congress. Absolutely they should. Why wouldn't they? The guy stonewalled him the whole time, and he had no right to do so by the law. Again, folks, I follow the law, not what I feel. Let's move on, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk about another pressing topic, too. We'll keep COVID in our rearview mirror, though, and see what else comes up with this. And by the way, I want to know, too, why Pfizer is getting a $1.24 billion contract by the CDC to produce more of these same shots that do not prevent any illness of the COVID or the SARS-CoV-2. Imagine that. You have a shot that doesn't work, and yet the government is paying you with American taxpayer dollars to give you more of that same shot. I pray to God and Baja isn't dead, folks. I really do. All right, folks, on another note, let's talk about what's going on with the wars abroad. We need to talk about this. This is all heating up very, very fast. We got about 9 minutes remaining in the program. Let's talk about the Ukraine war. This one is heating up. We saw Vladimir Putin last week discussing right on camera that he wants to be bolder. He wants to be bolder in this conflict. And I've been saying for a long time now, he needs to end this conflict. So I don't know what bolder means. Does it mean more attacks? What exactly does it mean? Will he end this war sooner rather than later? And the longer this goes on, the longer we risk the possibility of nuclear weapons being used, which I don't think anybody listening wants. So while the Moscow forces have captured a lot of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plants and whole other main parts of the region, this is a capital city under the same name as the region itself. This is one of the regions, along with the Donetsk, the Kherson region. These are all in the eastern southern portion of Ukraine. We know they also control Crimea right now as well, which they took back in 2014. Russia has annexed all these. So, therefore, they control them. Not complete control, but they're in this region. These are the regions of which they want. Now, we're seeing other large-scale damage of civilian areas that have resulted in Russian ballistic missiles. We know right now they're using a lot of these cruise missiles right now. Lots is going on. Lots is going on, and this is really starting to heat up right now. We're seeing, for instance, that the Ukrainians have now fired on a Iranian merchant vessel, by the way. They killed a sailor. And, of course, they called right after the fact and told the Iranians it was a very big mistake. They accused the Iranians of sending their drones to help Russia during this conflict. There's no evidence of that whatsoever, unfortunately, for them. But major problems in this conflict. I think Putin has got to step it up. I think he's got to take Kiev. I really do. We know there's been this firing back and forth, if you will. Ukrainian drones struck another major warehouse belonging to Wildberries. This is the Russians' biggest online shopping company. And again, the Ukrainian drones also struck the Saratov oil refinery in southwestern Russia. That's what Zelensky has reportedly said. Now it says here that Kiev has repeatedly targeted the refinery and many others since last year as it tries to choke fuel supplies to the Russian army and deny Moscow income from its oil exports. That will not be good, folks, because they're one of the last producers of sour crude in the country at any meaningful level. So if we want the price of oil to continue up, sure, shut that choke point off. Go ahead, do that. Zelensky said that the Engels military air base near Saratov, the main base for the Russian nuclear-capable strategic bombers, and other places inside Russia, including fuel storage tanks at the oil depots in various parts of the Russia Kaluga region, were also being targeted. So Putin has got to decide something. They're already bombing parts of Kiev. He needs to go in with troops, take control of the city, take control of everything. Zelensky will obviously flee. I've been given reports that his family is also in Israel right now. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. He'll either flee to Israel or to some part of Europe, possibly even the United States, who even knows. His future in Ukraine is over. There is no more Ukraine for Zelensky. It's over. Okay, I told you before, the longer this drags on, the greater the risk, of course, that nuclear weapons are involved. Because these regions are starting to form together. They're starting to conglomerate with one another, unfortunately. And that's given by the Russians aiding and abetting the Iranians in this conflict. And now we have Ukraine firing on Iranian ships in the Caspian Sea to their north transportation routes into Russia. So that's happening right now. I think Putin has got to come to the sense that, yes, he's got to do something sooner. The Russian people themselves do not want this to carry out. They want this to be over very soon. Ukraine is also already taking massive, massive hits. Some 2 million soldiers have already been killed. The number is only going to increase. There is no way for the Ukrainians, by the way, to end this. We're talking about right now giving them the opportunity to build Patriot missiles. It takes years to build a Patriot missile, folks. I mean, again, what do they have? A year from now? Are we going to still be in this conflict in a year? God, I pray not. Again, this should be over. It's already 1,600 days of this conflict. Ukraine has yet to deter Russia's advancing throughout the country. And, folks, President Trump came out just over the weekend, and he had the following to say about the Iranians, right? It's a deal one week, it's a deal the next week, then there's no deal, then we're bombing them again. What's the truth, folks? What is the real truth about what's going on? This was President Trump on, I believe it was on Air Force One over the weekend. Take a listen.
There's a deal on Hormuz, and then there will be a deal on the nuclear, or you might call it the denuclearization of Iran. I call it the denuclearization of Iran. So we're holding it. We'll just see. We can do it anytime we want. But we were asked by the three primary groups. We were also asked by Iran, very strongly, actually. They said, we'd like to make a deal. Now, I don't know what they say, because a lot of times they'll say that to me, and then they'll go out and say, we don't know what he's talking about. Obviously.
Now, the Iranian government has flat out rejected President Trump's claim that there's new negotiations underway. Not happening. Simply just not happening. Now, Trump could say that they're talking. They're not. They're not. And what is really happening is that the Iranians themselves, even Ismail Baghai, the Iranian spokesperson for the foreign affairs, came out and said the same thing. They're not talking to the United States. They are simply talking to Oman right now regarding the Strait of Hormuz and the future of that. That's what they're actually talking about. So that's taking place. And again, I think Trump called off his planned massive attack, so-called, at the request of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar. And we know this because, well, President Trump went on to say that. I don't have time to play you the clip, unfortunately. But he wanted to say he consulted with the Saudis, and they ended up coming out and him saying that he decided against it, of course. So Trump just simply listen to the Saudis and just say to himself, we can't do this? Or are we really running back on the possibility of these missiles destroying all of Saudi Arabia? We're low on Patriot interceptors, ladies and gentlemen. They only block about 10% of all the incoming missiles. Iran has pledged to destroy the Aramco oil inside Saudi Arabia. That'll conclude today's show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here as always. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow again for another episode of the Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy. God bless.